Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Let's begin. Now. The third passenger. The night started like any other Tuesday. The air was thick with a humid chill, the kind that clings to your skin and makes you feel uneasy for no particular reason. I was 21 at the time, a college student struggling to keep my head above water financially. My car was a beat-up 2008 sedan, a vehicle that groaned every time I turned the key, but it was my only way to make a living. I spent my nights driving for a ride-sharing app, navigating the dimly lit streets of a city that felt like a different world once the sun went down. At around 1:15 a.m., the rain began to fall. It wasn't a gentle shower, it was a torrential downpour that turned the asphalt into a black, reflective mirror. The streetlights flickered as the wind picked up, casting long, distorted shadows across the empty sidewalks. I was tired, my eyes burning from the glow of my phone screen, and I was about to call it a night when the notification pinged. The pickup location was at the edge of the Old Town District, specifically near the perimeter of the St. Jude Cemetery. It was a place locals avoided at night. The roads there were narrow, cracked, and lined with ancient oak trees that arched over the path like skeletal fingers. Normally, I would have declined a ride in that area, but the surge pricing was high, and I needed the money. I sighed, put the car in gear, and began the slow drive toward the cemetery. As I pulled up to the coordinates, I saw him. He was standing perfectly still under a rusted street lamp that hummed with a dying electrical buzz. He wore a long, heavy mackintosh coat that looked soaked through, yet he didn't seem to care about the rain. A wide-brimmed hat was pulled low over his brow, obscuring his face in a deep, impenetrable shadow. He didn't have any luggage. He didn't have a phone in his hand. He was just waiting. I pulled the car to the curb, and the moment I unlocked the doors, he was inside. The back left door opened with a slow, agonizing creak, and the interior of my car was suddenly filled with a scent that I can only describe as wet earth and old copper. It was an oppressive, heavy smell. He sat down directly behind me. I couldn't see him in the rearview mirror unless I tilted my head back, which made the hair on my arms stand up. "Good evening," I said, trying to sound professional despite the knot forming in my stomach. "Where are we heading tonight?" There was no reply for a long time. The only sound was the frantic ticking of my turn signal and the rhythmic thump-thump of the windshield wipers. Finally, a voice came from the back seat. It was a dry, rasping sound, like sandpaper on wood. "Drive straight," he whispered. "I need a destination for the app, sir," I replied, my voice trembling slightly. "It won't let me start the trip without an address." "Straight," he repeated, louder this time. "I will tell you when to turn." I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. I put the car in drive and began to move. We left the cemetery behind, heading deeper into the outskirts where the houses were few and far between. The silence in the car was unlike anything I had ever experienced. It wasn't just a lack of noise, it was a heavy, physical presence that seemed to push against my chest. I tried to make small talk to break the tension. "Nasty weather out there, huh?" I asked, glancing at the mirror. He didn't move. He sat perfectly upright, his hands resting on his knees. His skin, what little I could see of it under his sleeves, was a sickly, translucent white. He didn't blink. He just stared at the back of my head. The intensity of his gaze was so strong that I felt a literal itch on my neck. I reached for the radio, desperate for some background noise, music, news, anything to drown out the sound of my own heartbeat. My hand was inches from the dial when a cold, pale hand shot forward from the darkness of the back seat. He didn't grab me, but he hovered his hand over the console, blocking me. His fingers were unnaturally long, and the nails were jagged and stained. "No noise," he rasped. "I need to hear them." "Hear who?" I asked, my heart hammering against my ribs. "The ones who follow," he replied. My blood turned to ice. I looked into the rearview mirror, and then at my side mirrors. The road behind us was a void of darkness and rain. But as we passed under a solitary light, I saw it. A black van, its headlights turned off, was coasting about 50 yards behind me. It was moving at the exact same speed I was. Every time I accelerated, the van accelerated. Every time I tapped the brakes, the van slowed down. It was a predatory shadow, stalking us through the storm. I realized then that I wasn't just a driver, I was caught in the middle of something much darker than a simple rideshare. "Sir," I said, my voice cracking. "There's a car behind us. Do you know them?" The man in the back seat didn't look back. A low, guttural hum began to vibrate in his throat, a sound that wasn't quite a laugh, but wasn't a moan either. It was a sound of recognition. He leaned forward, and for the first time, I saw his eyes in the faint glow of the dashboard. They weren't eyes. They were milky, clouded spheres that seemed to reflect no light. "They are coming for the third passenger," he said. "What do you mean?" I stammered. "There's only 2 of us in this car." He slowly turned his head toward the empty seat next to him, the back right seat. Then, he looked at me and smiled, revealing rows of teeth that were far too sharp to be human. "Are you sure about that?" he whispered. Just then, the Door Ajar light on my dashboard flickered on. The car's computer chimed, a repetitive, high-pitched dinging that signaled the rear right door had been opened. But I hadn't stopped. We were going 50 miles per hour. I looked back, and the door was indeed slightly unlatched, swinging an inch or 2 in the wind. But the seat was empty. Or so I thought. Then, I felt it. A cold, wet weight pressing down on the back of my driver's seat. Something was sitting directly behind me, something I couldn't see, but could definitely feel. The car began to tilt slightly to the right, as if a heavy weight had just been added to the passenger side. The man in the mackintosh began to chant under his breath in a language I didn't recognize. The black van behind us suddenly roared to life, its high beams slamming on, blinding me through the mirrors. They weren't just following us anymore. They were hunting us.